Hello, everyone. My name is Leo, and today I will be giving just a short introduction on how to go about one-word anchor classes, or to be more precise, how to go about teaching the one-word anchor classes. So firstly, we will be dividing the section into two different smaller sections. The first of which will be the small grouped classes, and the second one will be the large grouped classes, because there are different ways of going about the two respective sections. First, we will explore the small grouped classes. The main method that these small grouped classes are formed is through partnership with schools. And the steps, there are mainly two steps actually. The first one is preparation, which is what you have to do before the class actually starts. The second one is you have to do something during class time. Technically, there is also a third part of what you do after the class, but that just goes into preparation for the next class. The first step is, of course, to contact the parents you're working with in order to tutor their child. Just some things to keep in mind. Firstly, they may not respond promptly. In my personal experience, it usually takes the normal waiting time would be about a week before they actually respond to you. Anything that doesn't exceed 1 week would be considered normal waiting time. After their response, which fortunately you got to that step of them responding to you, then you can collect their personal information, or more specifically, their child's personal information and information regarding their specific requirements and needs, such as which specific areas of the subject they're actually struggling with. And then you can also review the materials in advance, because sometimes if it's a child who may be in a lower grade level, some of the material they are having may be quite hard to teach. So you may want to review the materials beforehand yourself in order to find out the best way to go about teaching the material and telling them where the points of confusions are. Finally, you want to document this whole process so that we can give you the volunteer hours. By we, I mean one word anchor. And this documentation, it doesn't have to be too complex. You can just track down using a document the amount of time you spend on this step. We can give you the hours for that part as well, and not just the part of you teaching the class. Now it's time for class. So here's just some tips. I know for some this could potentially be the most challenging part of this process, which is when you actually meet the student, the 2D that you're working with. You want to build rapport with them. You may want to start the class. And again, these are just all tips. You don't have to do any of the steps, or you could do all the steps if you want to. But firstly, you want to build rapport with them, which means that you want to tell them about yourself. You want to ask them about how their day went. It just builds a connection between you and them and helps warm the vibes a tiny bit. It's a more relaxing and comfortable environment for the both of you. Secondly, you want to enunciate clearly, which means that you don't have to do anything too exaggerated. You can just speak clearly, and especially because of their environment. So it's more for their part rather than for yours. In my experience, many of them may be in quite noisy and loud environments that are not quite optimal for studying. So you want to be clear so that they can actually hear you. And it helps them maintain their focus as well. When you're teaching them, if they ever ask you for answers, you can give them the answers, but make sure to only give it to them after, I'd say, about two tries, maybe. But after two tries, you can give them the answer, but just don't give the answers too frequently. You have to make sure that they're actually thinking and they're actually guessing, because guessing is better than you just giving them the answers, right? And the main reason you do this is to make sure that you have to push them to the point where they're actually thinking, but don't push them to the point where they're becoming frustrated and they're giving up completely. I would say two times is probably the best balance, but it also goes with the child's personality. You want to establish timings for the next class, because as the previous slide discussed, there's usually a long waiting time between you and the parents' contact time. You want to establish the timings for the next class even before this session already ended. That's the best way to do it. But if their parents have some things and they're not that clear about when their next time is, it's completely fine to also just email them afterward. Now, there's just some general tips for your interactions with the student in general. You should require cameras if possible, because sometimes they will lose focus. So if you want them to maintain focus, you should definitely just politely but gently ask them to turn on their camera if possible. And also, a common question is the type of equipment that should be used. I'd say only if possible, you should try to use a stylus and a tablet, but it's fine if you don't have access to one. I just find that it's the easiest way to annotate on screen and to write and to draw and to do whatever you want. Let's move on to the second section of group classes. So these classes, I like to think of them as a step up from the small classes. So maybe you've done about a month or of the small classes and now you want to become more advanced, then you would do the group classes, which are typically considered to be more challenging. Pre-class, you want to first start with advertising. You have to have at least 5 students in order to actually start a class. And there are many different ways of advertising. Just some ideas. You can advertise through social media. Maybe you can post something on social media regarding your class. And then secondly, you can go to the library because I know, especially for your audience group of the class you're teaching, maybe the library is a very good spot to advertise. So this could be potentially very valuable. And you can also send out emails. If you have any email lists or email chains, you can just send those out and then use that as a way of advertising for your class. Just so we're clear, the advertising part, it usually entails you making a flyer. You're sending a flyer out to tell people about your class and to introduce them about how the class is and what it's about. Sometimes you want to provide a short summary of the steps too, of how the class progresses. The next step is to create the PowerPoint presentation. General rules that you kind of want to follow. They're more of guidelines rather than solid rules, but they're still helpful in the majority of cases. Firstly, you want to use many pictures. They're not just looking at the words. And secondly, you want to follow what's called the 5-5 rule. And this is really flexible. You don't have to follow it precisely. But what it basically talks about is that you should have only 5 bullet points on each slide. And for each of the bullet points, you should only have 5 words. It's very flexible, as I've said. And as you can see, I'm validating this rule right now by creating more than 5 different bullet points. I know sometimes it gets hard to follow if your information is really dense, if there's really a lot of things you have to go over. You want to only limit it to the extent that you feel comfortable, where it's not compromising on how much material you're including. You also want to ask frequent questions throughout your class. You want to ask them things about the material to make sure that they truly understand and that there's a way, it's not just you talking. There's also a chance for them to take a breath and maybe take a break. That's just a good chance for the both of you to actually take breaks. In terms of the length of the PowerPoint presentation, you should plan for at least 10 minutes more than the actual class time because in my experience, you always go under time. It's harder to go overtime in the class short, and you don't want to do that. So that's why you should prepare extra slides in order to make up for the time. And you don't actually have to do this, but you can also prepare a final Kahoot if you would like to. And it doesn't even have to be a Kahoot. You can do some other educational games that help them review the content of what you went over during the class. And that's just a tip for rounding up the class in general. Just some helpful ideas. You don't have to implement these ideas in the first class or so. As your class progresses, you can slowly implement many of these ideas if you want to, just to make it easier. You can consider having an assistant, so someone else inside your class who's not actually teaching, but who's helping you with the task of teaching. Number one job is you can create a feedback form for your class in which the students can tell you how you're doing and what some different things you can do to make your class even better and to take it to the next level. And the assistant can help you send out this feedback form at the end of every single class. Just as an assistant who's a real life human being can help you, technology can help you as well. And that's the reason why you should consider recording your classes if you feel comfortable, because it's a way to actually promote your class. Actually, not only to promote your class, but also to promote yourself as a teacher, because we can then post the videos under the One Word Anchor account on YouTube. And you can even consider editing these videos, you can either do it yourself or you can just directly send the videos to One Word Anchor for them to be edited by others within the organization. You should try to start the classes in advance, 5 minutes, if you want to, because many times it just creates a sense of professionalism and it makes you look better. And some people maybe they're early. If you start a class early, then you can also end early, right? Zoom, there's actually an edit feature, which means that after you already recorded the class, you can then use your computer to actually cut out some parts if you want to, of course, only if you want to. But if you want to, then please feel free to use the edit feature on your computer to cut out certain portions of the class. So for example, maybe there were periods when there was a pause because you give a question and they were thinking about it. That's really common. If you're posting that on YouTube, then there's no need to have that pause. So you can cut that out if you want to. Besides that, there's really nothing else more to say about the classes. Unless you have individual questions, then please feel free to reach out to One Word Anchor and present those questions, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a good class and good luck to everything.